Now let's go up to the hair, because this is where the rubber meets the road. This is going to be the problematic area for us. Now right away you can see two problems. One is that obviously the white background is still showing throughout these curls, and also our selection around the hair is not very believable. It looks like it's been painted on. It's a little bit too smooth. So we're going to turn on Smart Radius. The Refine Edge tool now has excellent edge detection features, and what Smart Radius is going to do is to allow Photoshop to treat soft, fuzzy edges in a different manner than hard, contrasty edges. It will optimize results for each type of edge independently. With Smart Radius selected, we're going to boost our radius up here. We're going to start fairly conservatively at the beginning. We'll just go maybe there, about 1.7 pixels. And notice that it does a nice job here of giving us a more natural selection around these edges. But we're still left with the big problem of what to do here. Now, in previous versions of Photoshop, this would require a lot of manual labor. But we've got a brand new tool here called the Refine Radius tool. This tool is automatically selected when you bring up Refine Edge. So where my cursor is a circle with a crosshair, that's not the quick selection tool, that's the Refine Radius tool. I'm going to boost the size of this brush up a little bit. Let's change it from 20 maybe to something like 30, 31. Looks pretty good. And watch what happens. I'm simply going to paint over areas where there should be transparency from the top layer, allowing our new background to show through. So here I'm just painting in a very rough and coarse manner. And look at that. It's almost like magic. It's allowing our new background to show through, but still maintaining some of the individual strands of hair. I'll paint over in here, for example. Bring my brush size down a bit with the left bracket key. And so essentially what we're doing is painting over areas where there should be transparency, allowing our new background to show through. And you don't have to be super precise with this. Photoshop is automatically doing its best to determine what's part of the foreground, the strands of hair in this case, and what's part of the background. And look at that, it's just lifting out our white background and letting our new background show through. Again, this is just an absolutely fantastic feature, and it's really hard to overestimate just how much time this will save you. You can see the sand coming through nicely there. I'll go down a little bit more in the brush size, and again, we're just looking for areas where there should be transparency in this top layer, and Photoshop is doing an outstanding job of maintaining hair while letting the background come through. Now there's a couple more spots here to finish up, but you have the idea, so I'm just going to hit one more spot in here. Now, so far so good, but let me zoom out here. Control minus on Windows, Command minus on a Mac. You can see that it still looks a little bit like helmet hair. The selection is a bit too cut in. We don't have those free-flowing loose strands of hair. I'll zoom back in to Command 1 and come back out just a bit. But here's how we're going to make this a much more realistic result. We started with a fairly low radius of 1.7. Watch what happens if I increase this. I'll go all the way up to, let's see, maybe about 40. Should look pretty good, I think. 40, 42. Now look at what's happened. Notice that these individual strands are showing up, and they're showing up alone without that white background. I'm going to turn the preview off and on again. Here's where we started. You can see that selection. And there's where we got with the Smart Radius. Let me show you what Smart Radius is actually doing. We can actually show the radius, and I'm going to zoom out here so you can see more of the image. If I click the Show Radius box or simply press J, we can see that our radius has been expanded. What does the radius do? Well, the radius determines the area that Photoshop is looking at in order to separate our top layer from the bottom layer. So if I go back down to a very small radius, somewhere about where we started, you can see that Photoshop is only going to be looking in this narrow range here to find elements of the hair that should be showing through. But if we go back to, I think we were about at 40, Look at how much further we've expanded that area, and Photoshop is intelligently picking up these individual strands of hair here and not bringing through that white background. I'm going to turn the preview off by pressing J. Now that just makes the hair look absolutely fantastic. We've got individual strands showing here, and they're silhouetted nicely against the water in the background. But look at what that's done here along this edge of the face and along that edge. But not to worry. Let me increase my brush size a bit. Because in addition to the Refine Radius tool, we have an Erase Refinements tool located directly beneath it. The shortcut for that is to press E on your keyboard. And you can see here that we've changed now to an eraser icon. In the same way that Refine Radius added transparency to our image, the Erase Refinements tool will eliminate that transparency, letting our top layer show through completely. So watch what happens as I paint over this area of his face. Now the preview is giving you just the background, but don't worry about that. If I let go, you can see now we've gotten back the edge along his face. We've gotten back skin that was cut off. I'll do the same thing here on this side. And again, this is more than just erasing on a layer mask, for example, because Photoshop is intelligently determining what should be allowed to show through and what should not be allowed to show through. So we've got a pretty nice selection here. The hair is looking really good. It's matching up well against our background. And along this shoulder we look good. Now there's a couple of little spots that we could touch up here. We could simply paint on the mask to adjust that. I'll show you how to do that as well. I'm going to zoom out here. But look at that selection. I mean, that's pretty amazing for just a couple of minutes of work. Now, yet another fantastic thing about these refined edge features in CS5 is that we can choose to output this to a selection, a normal selection on our layer. But if we click the pull down, we can output this to a brand new layer mask that will be built off of our selection. We could choose to create a brand new layer. We can choose a new layer with this layer mask. We could even make a new document or even a new document with this layer mask. Here I'm going to choose new layer with layer mask. Having the layer mask on there is going to allow me to touch up that part just over here without losing any of my hard-earned work. So I'm simply going to hit OK. And now notice it has turned off our original layer, so we always have this to go back to. It's made a copy of the layer, and it has made a mask in this layer that's comprised of our selection. Now let's zoom in here, Command 1 on a Mac, Control 1 on Windows. And if I select the mask here, I can simply choose my regular old brush tool, come down in size here, and what I want to do is verify that my foreground color is white, which it is, and I'm going to simply paint with white over this mask, and that's going to bring in the rest of my collar in here very nicely. So again, the flexibility it offers by giving us the results of the selection in a layer mask means that we can go in at any time and fine-tune our selection by painting on the layer mask. But this is just fantastic work here with the Refine Edge tool. It's going to save you a ton of time in Photoshop, and it's simply a feature that many of you will find is worth